ओमज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य रञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Dear Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand what it is that is truly taught through your sacred texts, and that we do not bring our own preconceptions and biases as we read these texts and distort them thereby.
We have a little situation. The battery is not just. Couple of minutes left.
Okay, sure.
Is that on for you? It's on. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
No, no,
Hare.
this is not connected.
Okay. That is not connected. Fine. Do you have the other mic too? I can just use the other mic and start off.
Yeah.
Hand mic is there?
Yes. If something is missing, yeah, it's working.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming today. And today we move into the 16th day of the battle. So today in many ways we will be moving out of the battle to do a backstory substantially. So till now we have focused on certain characters. First was focus on Bhishma, and we had 2 sessions. And then we had 1 session on Arjuna and Abhimanyu. The second was on Drona and Ashwatthama. So in general, now our lives are defined not just by our choices, but also by our relationships. Now you can say some relationships are chosen by us, are not chosen, and some are not chosen by us. But we are not entirely free in our choices. And that is not always a bad thing. Because if you were left completely free, now our mind could even drive us crazy. So our choices, they are shaped by our society, our culture, our family, our relationships. They happen within network. And there is always this question that how much, when a person does something, how much can we say, is this action something they are responsible for? And how much is it that their situation made them do it? That the situation left them with no choice. Now, somebody could go to the extreme and say, ultimately, we always have a choice. But realistically, we are always constrained by our situations. Say, we want to be honest in our work, but then we need that particular job, and maybe at that particular time there's a crisis in our family and a medical emergency. And say at that particular time, our boss tells us to do something unethical. And now normally we would not have done that. But at that time, we just cannot afford, say, to lose that job. And then, is that action done by us And more importantly, does that action reflect our character? Or does that action reflect a deviation from our character? Like sometimes in movie reviews or TV serial reviews, especially TV series reviews, sometimes the character seems to act out of character. That means this is not the way this person behaves. When we interact with people, whether it is real people in our interactions with them in our physical world, or even it is historical characters we read in epics or fictional characters that we see in in movies or TV shows. Generally, we connect with the characters, and when we connect with the characters, we get a sense of what this person is like, how this person behaves, and then if suddenly that person seems to behave in a very different way, then we say, what happened over here? So basically, we could say that the actions of a person, how much do they reflect their character and how much are they out of character? So, when a good person does a bad thing, is it that they were always hidden bad and now it is coming out? Or is it that it was an exceptional situation where they did something bad? So, in many ways, why am I discussing this right now? We are discussing this because we are going to focus on the character of Karna. And in many ways, Karna's and Bhishma's character arc is somewhat similar. But there are significant differences, and we will discuss those differences. But Karna, he is often seen as a person who was discriminated against throughout his life because he was not born in a, or at least it was thought he was not born in the Kshatriya kull. And then not only that, he seems to have also ultimately been defeated and killed by an unfair means. So this particular narrative around his life, that he was ruined by destiny. He tried to fight against destiny and he rose to great heights. But time and time again, it was destiny that sabotaged him. So that is often the narrative that is built around Karna. And of course, there is some truth to it. As they say, where there is smoke, there is some fire. At the same time, when we look at his character, now on the 15th day when Drona falls, Karna becomes the commander. And this is his moment of glory for him. He has, in every story, there is what we can call a character arc. Character arc is basically how the character's story evolves. And not just how the story evolves, how the person's personality, how their character evolves. Now, sometimes character arcs can be a person just stays the same throughout. Now, that is interesting if that person is some back support. Somebody has the hero is there, the hero is a friend, and the friend is always a friend. It's always there. But generally, what makes characters interesting is that they evolve, they grow, they become better with time. Now, of course, some people can become worse also. But people change with time. And these changes are seen in the way they think, in the way they prioritize, in the way they act. So now sometimes we change for the better and sometimes we change for the worse. So in his character arc, at least from an external perspective, if we consider Karna's character arc, now from an external perspective, becoming the commander was the zenith of his success, was the topmost point, that he was recognized that he became the commander. That means Not only was he recognized as a warrior, but he was recognized as the leader of warriors, as the one who was the best among a very illustrious assembly of warriors. And it is to his credit that he did not try to jump ahead of himself. When Duryodhana had offered Karna the commandership after after Bhishma had fallen on the 11th morning. On the 15th morning, it was that Karna became the commander. And in some ways, there was celebration, but it was also a sober mood. It was that Drona had been killed, and Bhishma and Drona had been the two most formidable warriors. And the Pandavas had not suffered any similar casualties. Of course, Abhimanyu's death had been horrendous, but Abhimanyu was not in the top tier of the Pandava world. The Pandavas themselves were the top 5 of the top tier. And they had, of course, Drupada and Virat had been killed, but they had not been, none of the top people had been killed. And in this case, the Kauravas had suffered 2 devastating reversals. So the mood was a bit sober. Also, when Karna became the commander, at that time, the moral lines between the two sides seem to have become increasingly fuzzy. That while Bhishma's killing was a bit questionable, but Drona's killing was certainly much more questionable. And so generally, when we don't know what to expect from the other side, then it becomes even more difficult to combat with. So Karna became the commander at a time that was, relatively speaking, a time of crisis for his side. Bhishma's fall had also been shocking, but Bhishma and Drona, both of them falling, was much more severe. So Karna now, in one sense, while it was a serious situation, he had the full opportunity to shine. So this was his moment of glory. And this was from the external perspective. External means in terms of the position that one gets, in terms of recognition that one gets. So he had got that. And generally, whenever there is any succession, there is a little bit of a power struggle. If after one person goes, who becomes the next commander? And there were others. Shalya was a senior person. There are other kings also. But Karna had, in the 5 days he had been fighting, one of his biggest accomplishments had been bringing down the Kurukshetra. And when he was made the commander, nobody questioned it. So this was also his glory. Not only did he become the commander, but it was without any major objection by anyone. So for him now, it was his opportunity, his responsibility to lead his side to victory. So with this context, now, see, generally speaking, when a big fight is going to happen, there is a lot of build-up to that fight. So I talked a little bit about the build-up now, from the psychological perspective, that his character arc was culminating. But now I will move and we look for the internal perspective. The internal perspective, what was happening. So now if we consider, in general, there is the word see has 2 meanings. See is we see with our eyes, and we see with our intelligence. For example, in a conversation we may say, I see your point. That does not mean your point is hanging somewhere in the sky and I'm seeing it. Is it? I see your point means I understand. So now in the Bhagavatam, but in general in the Vedic scripture, there is this theme of Pashyan apina pashyati. That we see but we don't see. That means something is there, out there for us to see, but it doesn't register in our consciousness. It doesn't, even if it enters, it doesn't stay there. So we could say, one is to see means to perceive, and the other is to contemplate, to appreciate, to deeply consider it, to understand it. So now, when we see things, it is commonly said that most of us don't see things as they are. Not most of us, all of us. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. It is our perceptions, our biases, our preconceptions that come into the picture. So, Karna, in Indian history, there has been the narrative of caste discrimination. And Karna is seen as especially one victim of caste discrimination. So, and because of that, often the facts of how unfair life was to him gets registered repeatedly. And while that is true, so there are facts, what is reality, and there are perceptions, what we see. So what exists and what we see. Well, that means it's more like what registers within us. So now in the case of moha, so actually in philosophy there is often a question of how do you know what is reality? So, or how do we know that our perception is reality? We say move from illusion to reality. So, move from illusion to reality. So, in general, if something exists and we perceive it, this is good. This is, we could say, this is moha. When there are facts and we don't see them. And when there is nothing over there and we see them. Like sometimes we say you are making a mountain out of a molehill. Isn't it? That something is not actually existing, but we are seeing it over there. And something is existing, but we are not seeing it. Now, if something doesn't exist and we don't see it, that is also not good, but that is functional. If somebody, when we say somebody is hallucinating, that means what? Nothing exists, but they are seeing it. So, sometimes we say, are you blind? That means what? You see something in front of you, how can you not see this? Sometimes we may see one person is being manipulated by another person, but we can see it clearly, but that person doesn't see it. So what happens is, sometimes something may exist, but we may not see it. Sometimes something may not exist, but we may see it. So, now the facts that, was there discrimination against Karna? Yes. That, was life unfair to Karna? Yes, definitely true. That is a fact, and there is no denying that. However, there are two opposite facts which also need to be considered. That is, so personally, when I was reading the Mahabharata, Mataji here today? So, she was talking about how she couldn't read the Mahabharata because of, what happened to Draupadi. So for me, when I was growing up, Karna was the character I could relate with the most. See, we all face a certain amount of negativity in our lives. And sometimes it's because of our own deficiencies. But there are some deficiencies that are in our control, and there are some deficiencies that are not in our control. And especially if we are devalued or demeaned because of things that are beyond our control, then that just causes a lot of resentment and anger within us. What can I do about it? So, whenever Karna would be, whenever I would watch the Mahabharata and I would see Karna, and all the time he would be referred to as Sutaputra. That's Suta. Now I didn't even know what that time the word Suta meant. But the way it was spoken, it was clear that it was not an affectionate address. Nor was it a respectful address. So because of that, it was irritating, it was jarring for me, especially because I have polio in my leg. So when I was growing up, there would always be kids who would call me Langda, cripple, and I didn't really feel very bad about it because by Krishna's mercy, I was good intellectually, and that mattered much more for me and for my parents. But still, it would hurt a little bit. And one thing was that it's something which I cannot cure, I cannot control that. So, see, if we are criticized for some things which we can work on and improve, then there is some point to the criticism. But if we are criticized for something which, so when we are criticized for something which we can change, then it makes sense, okay, that we can improve on it. But if somebody is criticized for something which they just can't change, then that is very frustrating. So when there is in India there was caste discrimination, in the West there is racial discrimination, maybe there's gender discrimination. So the point is that when something is beyond our control and we are criticized for that, then it hurts a lot. So I used to always feel that life for Karna was so unfair. And when I grew up, I liked Krishna. Of course, I grew up, we lived in Nasik where Ram was more prominent. And in our family, we used to hear Ram stories more. I like Krishna also, but I didn't really like how Karna was dealt with in his life. And one part of appreciating the Mahabharata was my own recognition of many things that I had not seen. So one is that facts that we do not see and things that we do see. So the fact, was life unfair to Karna? Yes, it was unfair to Karna. But then often Karna is contrasted with whom? With Arjuna. They were arch rivals. And then if we look at their life trajectory, then what often we don't see is, there is facts but we don't perceive, is life was unfair even to Arjuna. Not in the same way, but definitely in many ways. So life was unfair to Karna in the sense that he did not get the respect of being a warrior. But as far as whatever storyline we know from the Mahabharata, he didn't really have he was never threatened in his childhood. Nobody tried to poison him, nobody tried to burn him alive. Those whom he thought as his parents, they were there with him throughout his life. His father did not die when he was young. His mother did not become a widow. So he never had to go to exile. He never had to see his wife being dishonored publicly. So in that sense, a lot of bad things happened to Arjuna also. And again, how many of these could Arjuna control? Karna couldn't control that he was thought of as not a Kshatriya. Now we don't control who our relatives are. Arjuna could not control that he happened to have Duryodhana as a cousin. He couldn't control that he had Dhritarashtra as an uncle who was on the throne and who was, you could say, excessively attached to Duryodhana. And excessively attached is an excessively polite word to describe the extent of the attachment. But it was that each of these, they were very severe things. To lose one's father when one is very young, to lose the sense of security in your own home, to know that someone in your own home wants to poison you, to know that someone has tried to burn you alive, and it's your own relatives. But to live a threatened existence like that, it can scar a person tremendously. So Arjuna also had losses, threats, and both happened in his childhood. Now we could say that Karna was humiliated. Say when Draupadi, in Draupadi Swayamvar, we'll come to that incident a little later. But actually, in what happened to Arjuna, what happened to Draupadi later in the assembly, that was humiliating for Draupadi, it was humiliating even for Arjuna. So humiliations he also faced in his life. So it's not just humiliations. Now later on, for example, Arjuna had to. He was a warrior. He was the embodiment of masculinity, healthy masculinity, and yet he had to act like a eunuch. He had to become a dance teacher. Now if we consider it from that perspective, it could have been quite emasculating for him. It could have been quite humiliating for him. So the point is, life is hard for everyone. And I started by this thing that, when do our situations justify our actions? That we may make certain choices, we may make certain decisions, and when do those situations justify those actions? And when do they stop justifying those actions? So, in general, when somebody does something wrong, so basically, what we're trying to discuss over here is, this may seem a little bit more conceptual and not as dramatic, as we will come to the dramatic part either today or tomorrow. See, bad things happen to all of us. Now, bad things happen, and then in response, we do bad things. Now, suppose we try to talk with someone and that person yells at us. It's strange, what's the matter? But then we come to know that something terrible has happened in their life and that's why they did it. Then we tend to excuse it, isn't it? So to some extent, our actions being determined by situations is understandable. Say, if somebody has a bad back and they say, I can't lift up this weight. Why are you such a weak person? You don't blame them. That the body is injured over there. They can't lift it. Now, just as the body can get injured, the mind can also get injured. And when the mind is wounded, then our capacity to sustain, to tolerate, to withstand decreases. So when we are very much hurt by someone already, and then at that time somebody else makes a critical statement, we might just explode on that person. So to some extent, see, our actions, now this is the soul, this is the mind, and this is the body. Now, the actions come from the soul, but there are many actions which just come from the body. There are many actions which come just from the mind. Now, of course, the soul is involved, but you could say there are many actions here, like 90%. They are coming from the body itself, and the 90% they are coming from the soul, mind itself. It's like, say, suppose we feel itching, something will scratch. Now, maybe when I'm sitting in public, scratching my head is not the best thing to do. But, it's not something we are conscious of also. There are many things which we do at the level of the body. So basically, our body and mind are affected by our circumstances. So, when the body and mind are affected by our circumstances, we may do certain things as a response to those circumstances. And maybe that response is right, maybe that response is wrong. But we understand that, okay, this was situationally determined. So now if we consider Karna's life, in everybody's life, there are some key deciding moments. Every day is important and every day we make decisions. But not every day's decisions are equally consequential. Now, some decisions are very consequential and we know the consequence of those decisions when we take the decisions. And there are some which are just thrust upon us and we make some choices at that time and they turn out to be hugely consequential. So, if we consider Karna's life, so there are 3 incidents which in those incidents, his actions shaped his life. So, in a major way. One was that in the martial exhibition. So, in the martial exhibition, what happened was Karna became friends with Duryodhana. And that changed his life.
Now, in many ways, he felt it was a great stroke of fortune for him. He didn't see it just as a stroke of fortune, he saw it as Duryodhana being very kind to him, being very generous to him. Now, the second was the disrobing of Draupadi or the gambling match. His actions over there. And the third was the Krishna's proposal. That was before the war. Krishna came with a peace proposal to Duryodhana. And before he left, he also had a discussion with Karna. So these three are defining moments in his life. And we will see that what we are trying to see is here, how much can we say the situation has determined somebody's choice? And how much can we say that the person has made that choice? So we will also, now there are multiple comparisons that we can do. One comparison which we will do maybe in tomorrow's session more is between Karna and Arjuna, which I started off right now. But we will also look at the comparison between, say, in this particular case, between Bhishma's life journey. Because I said Bhishma's life or character arc, we can say. So, and how things affected him. Now, for him, the vow was a big thing. The vow that he took. For him, also the gambling match. That was a time when something serious happened from his side. And then, after that, we could say it was not a conscious decision. Krishna didn't even expect Bhishma that you come over to Mandava side. But his choice in the war. So we will compare both these characters and we'll see what happened over there. So now Karna had discovered that he had an interest and an ability in archery when he was growing up. Now the Sutas, they are not Kshatriyas, but it's not that they are ignorant of warfare. They are generally meant to be charioteers. But as charioteers, sometimes they are also required to fight. And so he had some familiarity, and his parents noticed that he was exceptionally good at archery. And then he tried, I want to get some training. He tried to go to Drona, and Drona refused. And then he decided, I want to get the training from the best people. So he went to Parshuram. And Parshuram had said, I will not give training to anybody except a Brahmana. Because he had lost trust in Kshatriyas. So then he acted as if he was a Brahmana. And he became a beloved student of Parshuram. He learned. In many ways, the relationship with Parshuram and Karna was like the relationship between Drona and Arjuna. So of course, Parshuram didn't have many students. He was very, very selective. But then, there was a time when Parshuram discovered that Karna was actually not a Kshatriya. Yeah, sorry, not a Brahmana. So he said that basically he was sleeping, Parshuram was sleeping and he was sleeping on Karna's lap. That time an insect came and bit him. Now, different people have different kinds of tolerance. Kshatriyas are capable of tolerating physical pain to an extreme degree. Now, Brahmanas are also capable of tolerating physical pain, but that is more the pain of austerity. So, for example, a Brahmana can stay without food for a long time. A Brahmana can stay without physical indulgence for a long time. Kshatriyas, the physical appetites within them are very strong. But at the same time, the capacity to withstand injuries and pain, that is substantially higher. So, when Parshuram woke up and he felt the blood flowing, he said, what happened? And he saw him. On one side, this was Karna's faithfulness to his guru, that he did not want his guru to be disturbed. And we may say it was terrible that when he had exhibited such an act of service, that he was cursed by his guru. Well, yes and no. Now, Parshuram, we could say, when bad things happen, we can either resent that the bad things have happened, or we can be grateful that worse things have not happened. Isn't it? So, he had gained that knowledge in a false pretense. And Parshuram could have cursed him that you will forget all your knowledge right away. That you lied to me to gain this knowledge, and you will lose all this knowledge. But Parshuram did not do that. Parshuram did curse it. What was the curse? Yes. Yes, at the time of your greatest need, you will, the knowledge, and not all your knowledge, he said, especially the knowledge of the celestial mantras that I have given you, that will slip away from you. So, circumstantially speaking, it was a curse, but it was not the worst of curses. So he did gain that knowledge, and then still he was not really known, because Parshuram didn't have an academy where he could display his students. So then what happened was, he decided to come to Drona's academy, and then Drona was having a martial exhibition. Now technically speaking, this martial exhibition was for his students, because see, in every system of governance, that there is an element of power, but there has to be an element of trust also. That the kings were powerful, but no matter how powerful a king might be, unless the citizens trusted the king, the kingdom would not sustain itself. And one aspect of the trustworthiness of the kings was that the kings had the martial abilities to protect the citizens. So, in one sense, the Gurukul, which was meant to train the students, was also meant to demonstrate to the citizens that these warriors have really learned. These are princes, and they are going to become your future kings, and they are competent. So, it was for the citizens to attend and see, but it is primarily for Drona students. And then when Drona students were exhibiting their ability, one by one, everyone came and exhibited. And then Arjuna was fearless. Bhima and Duryodhana, both of them were almost equally good at mace fighting. Now, Bhima was slightly more physically powerful, Duryodhana was slightly more skilled. But overall, they were an equal match. And when they were both exhibiting their skills, then there was a duel between them. And then the duel seemed to change from an exhibition match to a real match. And then Kripa intervened, enough now. You don't have to fight like this. So then after that, as Arjuna had exhibited skills, he wowed everyone by his skills. And while everyone was applauding him, that's the time suddenly a voice came. And that voice said, I can do better than what Partha has done. Everybody was surprised. Who was this voice? And there's a tall, majestic figure. Now, in many ways, Karna was seeking his moment of glory. But right from the beginning, the way it worked out is, Karna stole Arjuna's moment of glory. Isn't it? So that rivalry started. See, everybody has the special moments in their life. And when somebody upstages them on their special moments, it creates an annoyance, a resentment. This could have been done any other time also. So, if somebody is getting married and they're making an announcement that this person is getting married, and then at the extended family gathering is there, and everybody is celebrating it, at that same time somebody else says, okay, or says, let's put it another way, say somebody is expecting a child, and in a family we announce that I'm having a child. At the same time somebody else says, okay, I'm going to get married. And what happens is one announcement upstages the other announcement. And then, you could have told this a few days later. Why do you have to tell this right now? Why do you have to steal my moment from me? Isn't it? That's a natural human feeling. So what happens is that Karna upstages, steals Arjuna's moment. And from that time, their rivalry is born. Now we can't really blame Karna for that. He was just looking for his moment. And isn't it? So he saw an opportunity. But he said, I can do everything better than what Arjuna said. Am I allowed to compete? Now, everybody was taken aback. This was a little unexpected situation. So, Drona remembered that Karna had come to him for education before. He noticed that young boy had become a young man now. He said, yes. And now, Karna also wowed everyone by his skills. And although he tried, he equaled what Arjuna had done, but he could not exceed. And because he had boasted right at the beginning, I can exceed what Arjuna has done, he wanted to demonstrate that. And he said, can I have a duel with Arjuna? And as soon as Arjuna heard this, Arjuna grabbed his bow. Yes, I will put him in his place. But then, that's when, it's one thing for us. As I said, this was like a more or less like a private gathering for Drona's students. Now somebody else has suddenly come in. Normally, say if there is a singing competition, if there is any competition, there are participants. If there is an inter-school singing competition, okay, if some student comes up, which school are you from? Where are you coming from? That kind of question is but natural. So in that situation, they asked him, what are your antecedents? Now this question can be seen as casteist. But from a functional perspective, it is a natural question. Okay, where are you come from? What is your family? So now there are two extremes that when we talk about the character of a person. Character means I'm talking here in terms of the characteristics or the varna of a person. The one extreme is to think that it is determined entirely by birth. It is entirely by birth. But the other is to think that it is, let's put it, birth is all that matters. Birth doesn't matter at all. Now, where we are born matters. Actually, why was the birth matters? Say, if there is a child who grows up in a family where every day at dinner, all that he discusses, every day in the mealtime, all that discusses politics. And there's another family, maybe that's a family of parents who are in science, they're scientists, researchers, and every day more they discuss science. Then, if, say, the student has to go into IIT, now who is better prepared for that? Obviously, isn't it? So, the family we are born in, even from this life's perspective, matters. Now, if we understand karma more, then we also understand that the family we are born in is also determined by our past karma. Isn't it? So, in that sense, birth does matter. So, birth matters in two ways. The problem is to say that birth does not matter at all, or birth is the only thing that matters. Birth matters because usually birth is associated with upbringing. That the family in which we are born, that determines the way we are raised. But birth matters because that is based on past karma, which often indicates the mentality, which indicates the impressions, which indicates the tendencies. So, generally speaking, we will see also that there are certain groups of people who are good at certain professions. Say, for example, Gujaratis are generally very good at business. If you go to UK or America, many of the hotel businesses there are run by those people. So now, somebody say it's in their genes. Now, yeah, you could call it in their genes. But it's natural that some groups of people will be good at certain things. Does that mean that anybody who is a Gujarati can never do anything other than business? Of course not. They can be good in other fields also. And does that mean that every Gujarati will automatically be good in business? Not necessarily. But the birth does matter. And now the problem became that where birth became the only thing that mattered. And that's why in our tradition also such people are called as Brahma Bandhus. They're not Brahmana, they're Brahma Bandhus. They're born in the Brahmana family, but birth has to be the foundation for developing the qualities. So my point is this inquiry was not unfair. Where are you born in? So certainly you could say, people could say he has extraordinary abilities and that's good. But then his head fell because he recognized that he was not born in a Kshatriya family. He acknowledged that just by his actions, he did not speak it. Now all along, when Duryodhana had been watching Arjuna perform, as Arjuna was gaining more and more applause, Duryodhana's heart was burning more and more. He always had that rivalry, and that rivalry had not just remained a rivalry. The rivalry had gone down to becoming an enmity. See, rivals are both want the same goal and both will fight to get to that same goal. But enemies are where the goal is to destroy the other person. So in sports, should there be rivalry or enmity? Rivalry, yes. So now rivalry is not the same as enmity. Rivals are not meant to be enemies. So Duryodhana saw the Pandavas as enemies. And he knew that there's going to be a fight and I have to destroy them. So rivalry, the characteristic is there is some common goal that both want in rivalry. But here the goal is destroy the other person. Destruction of the other person. So now he was thinking, I can deal with Bhima, but I need someone as a foil for Arjuna. And when he saw Karna, his excitement became very high. Here is my opportunity. And the moment Karna was questioned, what is your background? And his head fell. Duryodhana said, hey, here is my opportunity. This is the chance for me to win Karna over to my side. And there, it seemed that he gives a very anti-casteist speech. It is actually that he sometimes some people celebrate him as a champion of against caste discrimination. However, if you see, his speech is not that. His speech is that he said, look at the arms of Karna, look at the body of Karna, look at his physique, look at his ability. So he said, can a lion ever be born of a jackal? He said, this is a warrior. And this is a Kshatriya. And if you do not consider him to be a Kshatriya, if you do not consider him to be royalty, I will make him royalty. And he gave him Angadesh. Now, but interestingly, the argument which he makes over there, can a lion be born to a jackal? Now, what does he mean? He is also buying into the narrative that qualities are determined by birth. Isn't it? Isn't it? That's what he's saying. That means, now it seems that he is born in a lower caste, but he is actually not born in a lower caste. So he is saying that he must be born somewhere else. That's the implication. He is not challenging the caste narrative per se. He's just saying he's challenging the ascription of a lower caste to Karna. He's saying he does not belong. Because the example does not say look at his abilities. He's saying look at his physique. And the specific example he gives thereafter is that can a lion be born to a jackal? Like something, basically an example of can a more powerful being be born in a less powerful species. So he is not in any way going against the whole system of caste by birth. Now Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that sakale ne mahata yogo nashta paranta. That by the power of time, things deteriorate. So that's why and it is when things have deteriorated that Krishna appears. That's why when the society that we see in the Mahabharata, the culture that we see in the Mahabharata is not the ideal culture. If it had been the ideal culture, then Krishna would not have need to appear at that time, isn't it? It is because things have gone away from the ideal culture that Krishna had to appear. So, was there caste discrimination? Yes, it was there. But everything in scripture, when scripture is there, now everything in scripture is not necessarily prescriptive. Prescriptive means this is how things should be. That often it is just descriptive. This is how things were at that time. So, for example, in Chaitanya Charitamrita is described that and the Namacharya Haridas Thakur was not allowed entry into the Jagannath. Now, does that mean Mahaprabhu endorses this? Does that mean Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami endorses this? Is he prescribing that anyone born outside some Hindu Dharma should not be allowed? No, that's not what he said. Okay, this was the status and Mahaprabhu did not fight against it. But did Mahaprabhu endorse it? There's no restriction of that. There's no mention of that. Some things in scripture are prescriptive and some are descriptive. So that there was a predominant notion that one's character is determined by birth. That is very much there in the Mahabharata. But is that the prescription of the Mahabharata? No, it is not. In the same Mahabharata there is the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita Krishna is saying that, what does it say? Guna karma vibhagasha. It doesn't say janma. It's janma karma vibhagasha. Janma vibhagasha. So we could say scripture has both, it's not one or two. We have to see what is prescriptive and what is descriptive. So anyway, the point is that when Duryodhana offered his hand to Krishna, he said, I will make you the king of Anga. And there itself, he arranged for his coronation. He got sanctified water from a nearby river and the ceremony was performed. And at that time, Karna felt extremely indebted. And Duryodhana, whatever you say, he is good at manipulating people. Now he knew how to win people over and he knew also how to anger people. Whether he did it intentionally or sometimes unintentionally also. So in this case, Karna felt so indebted. He said, you have done me such a great favor. How can I repay you? And what did Duryodhana say? I want nothing from you except your friendship. It's like, there is knock down and there is knock out. So, Karna was completely bowled over. And it's not just that he's giving me a kingdom, but he wants me to be his friend. That he will always have. Now those words would come back to haunt Karna later. Now in this situation, Karna saw an opportunity and grabbed an opportunity. There is nothing absolutely wrong with it. By his archery skills, he had attained something glorious. Now after this, slowly, Karna wanted to belong to the circle of Duryodhana's inner circle. So he was the king of Anga, but most of the times he had just delegated the kingdom of Anga, management of King Anga to someone else, to his ministers. Because Anga was already being managed. Now there's one more question, subtlety over here. Actually, when Duryodhana gave the Anga kingdom to Karna, there's a question of legality over here. See, the question of inheritance itself was debated at that time. The whole Kuru kingdom, whose was it? It was the Dhritarashtra, it was supposed to go to Yudhishthir, was it supposed to go to Duryodhana? So, was the Anga kingdom his to give? That itself could be a question. But the Pandavas, despite their differences, they recognized that this is a matter of our family's honor. It's like one person in the family said, I'll give charity. And another person said, no, I don't want to give the charity. Then it becomes a disgrace to the entire family. So the Pandavas went along with that. So Karna wanted to always belong to Duryodhana's inner circle. And he mostly stayed with Duryodhana in the assembly in the kingdom of Hastinapur. And now, initially, Karna had no idea about Duryodhana's evil tendencies. This Duryodhana was a bit spoiled, and that's what everybody knew. But the attempt to kill Bhima, that had been kept secret. Nobody else knew about it. And then, when Duryodhana started hatching the plot, especially by Shakuni's influence, that he said that let's send the Pandavas to Varnavath and have them burnt alive. So Karna opposed it. And Karna said that, why do you do such things? Let's challenge them for a straight fight, and if you defeat them, the whole kingdom will be yours. Now, what happened was, Karna was a newcomer in the group. And from Duryodhana's perspective, Duryodhana respected Shakuni more. Why? Because Duryodhana was cunning and Shakuni was even more cunning. So he said, hey, bro, he is really good. So Shakuni told Karna, you are just a child. In a war, there is never certainty of victory. Therefore, if success can be achieved without war, it is always better. Now that sounds good, but what is the alternative? The alternative is not to conspire and murder your enemies. So somehow, when Karna would oppose Shakuni's and Duryodhana's plans, Duryodhana would shoot him down. And then Karna had a very great need for belonging. See, he knew that although he had been given the honor of becoming a king, the assembly of kings, had they really accepted him? Maybe, maybe not. But if Duryodhana accepted him fully, then what would happen is everybody would accept him. That's what his hope was. And he very strongly wanted to belong to the group of Duryodhana. And that's how initially he would give some good suggestions, but Duryodhana would shoot them down, and slowly stop doing that. Say, if a kid is grown up in a good family and the kid goes and stays in a hostel, and there in a hostel or in a college, there are always what you call the cool kids. Now the cool are often fool, but whatever it is. But nobody wants to be alone. Everybody wants to belong. So now, say this kid has grown up, been told, drinking is bad, taking drugs is bad. Don't get into these things. And then he goes, he's a group of people, and they're all going to party where they're going to drink. And he says, drinking can make us crazy. It's a waste of money. It hurts our health. We lose control over ourselves. Let's not drink. You are just a baby. What do you know? Grow up and enjoy life. So some people think as if drinking is like a sign of graduation into adulthood. So now, if that kid wants to belong to that group, initially we say no. But then, at no, what happens is, then there's the fear that I'll be excluded from it. And then, in wanting to be included in that group, that kid may not only do that activity, but do it more than everyone else. Isn't it? Maybe there's a party where everybody drinks, and this person says, I'll drink more than all of you. So, this is unfortunately what happens to Karna. That in the gambling match, Karna has been opposing Duryodhana's schemes before. And in the gambling match, it is Karna who comes up with the idea. That he goes fully with the idea of the gambling match. There's no evidence that he opposes the idea of gambling match. And then he's among the persons who are mocking Yudhishthira when Yudhishthira is losing. They are laughing and mocking and goading him. And then it is he who suggests that once Draupadi is lost, they have one Draupadi, says, she is our maid. And drag her into the assembly and we can do whatever we want with her. Now, to his credit, Karna later regrets this. and he expresses regret to Bhishma when they have the final meeting on the 11th morning before Karna enters into the battlefield. And he also expresses regret to Krishna when they both meet together just before the war begins. But at this point, he is completely carried away. And he says that when Draupadi is dragged in and she's brought in, everybody's aghast. And he says, what's wrong with however we treat her? A woman who has 5 husbands is a prostitute. Now, there are so many things wrong with this statement. So first of all, even if somebody is a prostitute, that does not give anyone a right to treat them whatever they want. Even a prostitute is a human being. So everybody has to be treated with some basic respect. Now, more importantly than that, Draupadi is by no means, just because she has more husbands, that does not make her that kind of woman. She did not do anything specific to snatch more than one husband. Isn't it? She just obediently went to her father's, the Swayamvar that her father had planned, and it was her elders who decided that. We know the circumstances that led to it. That Kunti spoke certain words, and then Vyasdev came and confirmed, and then Drupada consented to it when Vyasdev's consent was there. So she had gone along with her elders. So to call her by that name, to call any woman by that name is horrendous, but to call a respectable Kshatriya woman by that name, that itself is an offense for which he could be called out and killed. This is a grievous insult. Now, in this situation, the Pandavas, see, there is one of the driving questions of the Mahabharata is Dharma Sammoha. What Arjuna is asked by Krishna is Dharma Sammoha Chetaha. So what happens is, everybody in that assembly has Dharma Sammoha. Now, Dharma Sammoha is confusion about Dharma. So if you consider Bhishma, what is his Dharma Sammoha? It is his vow and it is his Kshatriya Dharma. It is his vow to his family or vow to his dynasty and his natural Kshatriya Dharma. You could say that a Kshatriya is meant to protect an Abala, is meant to protect a woman. So now, there are some Sri Vaishnava Acharyas say, even for the Pandavas, there is the Dasya Dharma. Dasya Dharma means they have been lost in the gambling match, so they have become Das, they have become like slaves. But they also have the Pati Dharma. So the Pandavas also made a mistake. They didn't have to stay silent. That yes, they had been lost in the gambling match, but that does not mean that just because they are servants, does not mean that they have to withstand any kind of abuse by their masters. But this whole situation came in such a way, and the Pandavas basically followed their Yudhishthir, and Yudhishthir was so overwhelmed. He just, what is happening? He didn't know. Now Karna was torn between his friendship and again his duty as a warrior, the Kshatriya Dharma. So everybody there ended up choosing an Upadharma, a lower dharma. So now in one sense, the Pandavas are also culpable. The Pandavas are also guilty over there. But it is Draupadi's chastity and their relationship with Draupadi that saved them. So while Draupadi is the most dishonored, she actually emerges as the most honorable person in this assembly. Why most honorable? Because she tries to remind everyone of Dharma. She tries to prevent that adharma from happening. It is, you could say it's a dishonor for her, that is true, but beyond that it's adharma. So now Karna does not just this one thing. He suggests the idea, then he calls Draupadi by a very foul name, and then when Draupadi says, if Yudhishthira had already lost me, had lost himself, how could you gamble me? So was the gambling match valid? So nobody speaks. Bhishma remains silent. Bhishma says, there are two principles over here, and I am bewildered about it. He says, wife always belongs to the husband. At the same time, nothing belongs to a slave. So then, considering these two, I am confused. Now, when you say when a wife belongs to a husband, now that is not in the sense of like some simple property that can be staked away. If you see, Yudhishthir gambled all his property away. And then after that, he gambled his brothers, then he gambled himself, and then he gambled his wife. Now, that was the wrong thing, no doubt. But the point is, he did not treat her simply like property. It's like say, when there's a loving relationship, you say, you are mine and I am yours. So it is possession, but possession in the sense of an intimate relationship. But nonetheless, what he did was wrong. But the thing here was that when there was opposition and nobody spoke anything, Bhishma also remained silent. So at that time, Vikarna spoke. Vikarna was one of the brothers of Duryodhana who had some virtue within him. And he first said, all of you elders, she's asking us a question. This is the assembly where justice is to be given. Please speak and answer her question. Nobody spoke anything. If none of you are going to speak, then I will speak. And he says, I have observed three things wrong in this. This first is, Yudhishthir was forced to gamble when he didn't want to gamble. Secondly, he was put against a professional gambler. And thirdly, he was goaded on by others till he kept gambling and gambling. And lastly, as Draupadi says, that he gambled her after he had lost himself. So considering then it's interesting, the four regulative principles are not directly mentioned in the Mahabharata, but he also mentions these four things only. He says, generally when men get under the influence of gambling or intoxication or hunting, not meat eating but hunting and womanizing, they lose their good sense. And what they do under such situations should not be considered seriously. Therefore, this whole gambling match should be declared null and void. And therefore, the Pandavas should be given back everything that they had taken. Say, it's like even in gambling casinos, if somebody makes a huge bet, if they lose everything, and if they can prove, at least in some casinos it's like that, if they can prove that that person had drunk so much that they were not sober, then that gambling bet is not considered valid. Now, of course, it doesn't always apply, but the point is that it is understood that sometimes people lose control over themselves. And then if somebody is not sober when they make some decision, then should that decision be taken seriously? So he says no. When Vikarna speaks this, everybody applauds. And while everybody is applauding, one person gets up. Who is that? Karna. And he says, I have observed many improper things in this assembly, but nothing is as improper as the impetuous speech of this Vikarna. It's horrendous. That is the most improper thing, he said. He says, nobody forced Yudhishthira to gamble. He says, he gambled on his own. And he chose to gamble against Shakti. The elders did not object to it. He did not object to it. Now, after losing, he is objecting to it. If he had a preservation, he should have objected before. And he says, we goaded. He may have been goaded, but he chose to gamble. And he said, finally, Draupadi has been won by us. And therefore, we have a right to. Yudhishthira gambled her and he lost her. And then everybody falls silent. So we see over here, there's a difference between there is wrongdoing. Wrongdoing can be of two different kinds. wrongdoing is the right we don't do. That is also wrongdoing. Right we don't do. And the wrong we do. Generally, we think of right wrongdoing as the second, but both are wrongdoings. So actually, Bhishma's wrongdoing falls in the first category, whereas Karna's wrongdoing falls in the second category. Bhishma did not stop the wrong from happening, but Karna made the wrong happen. And when it was about to be stopped, he pushed it on. He made sure that it happened. So in that sense, while both of them chose a Upadharma, Karna's actions here are far more grievous. They're far more severe. And so this is the time when his character just goes down. And it just keeps going down. So we could say, like as we started by talking about the discussion, that when is a person's action determined by their character and when it's out of character. So now we could say that Karna's choice of Duryodhana as a part friend, it was the opportunity he grabbed it. But then as he started pleasing Duryodhana, he started doing something terrible. Now we could say even the gambling match, what he did was terrible, but the whole situation was so shocking that everybody acted in a bad way over there. Although we could say the way he acted was the worst. Dushasan could be considered the worst, Duryodhana could be considered the worst. But Karna was the worst in the sense that was not what was expected of him. But till this point, he is not seen as a villain. He's seen more as a supporter of the villain. But he acts in villainous ways. But even this could be said to be, so generally when somebody does something wrong, it could be because of ignorance. So his choosing Duryodhana could be because of ignorance. Now, I talked about his three defining incidents in his life. Karna is choosing Duryodhana, that was ignorance, he did not know. Now, this could be because of circumstance. That was such a shocking circumstance to come up that everybody just didn't know how to act at that. Okay. It's not fully excusable, but we could say it like that. But the third major life-defining situation for him, that was completely by his choice. So we will talk about Krishna's peace mission more when we talk about Duryodhana. But after the peace mission got over, it failed. And then Krishna was about to depart. Krishna told Karna that I would like to meet you. So the next morning, Krishna and Karna met. Karna came on his chariot and Krishna was on his chariot. And Krishna said, I want to talk privately. Krishna had Satyaki with him. Satyaki got on Karna's chariot. And they followed at a distance and Krishna and Karna talked. And Krishna told Karna that you are Kunti's son. And you long to be royalty. You are royalty from birth. And you come on the Pandavas side, and Yudhishthir and Arjuna and all the Pandavas will respect you and follow you the way the Devatas follow Indra. And basically Karna had wanted two things. Always, he wanted respect and he wanted dynasty. A dynasty or something even nobody could give him. But he wanted respect. Now Duryodhana had given him respect, but what he had wanted and more Karna was ready to give him, even from a material perspective. Now put aside the devotional perspective that Krishna is God and he should surrender to Krishna. Now significantly Karna was there when the peace proposal was going on. So Karna also saw Krishna's Virat Rupa. Now he didn't know how to process that. He also thought probably like Duryodhana that is some magical trick or whatever. He respected Krishna. There is no indication that he was either devoted to Krishna or that he was opposed to Krishna. He respected Krishna as a warrior. And he said, you come to the Pandavas side and you will get everything that you have dreamt of. And this is where, a decision made intentionally. It is out of intention. It is conscious choice. So what he used two reasons. He says that Duryodhana Give me a kingdom. And he has fought this war out of his confidence in me. Now is the time when he needs me the most. How can I abandon him right now? What kind of friend would I be if I abandoned him at this particular point? So now this is actually a perverse logic. You say, now yes, Duryodhana has helped him and he should be grateful. Say if somebody has helped us in our time of need, maybe we needed some financial help, money, and they gave us some money. And that person comes to us, I need some money urgently, please help me. Say, okay, I'll try as much as I can. Okay, what can I do? Says, there's a bank nearby, I'm trying to rob the bank. Come and help me rob the bank. No, I can't do that. He said, what kind of friend are you that you don't help me in this? So, when such a question comes up, there are some questions that should not be answered. There are some questions that should be questioned. What does that mean? The response here is, what not? The response is, what kind of friend are you that you are asking me for this kind of? Isn't it? Isn't it, sir? Friendship doesn't mean if a person is doing something terrible, I'll stick by your side. Isn't it, I'll pull you away from there. Now, if Karna had truly been a friend, he could have gone and tried to make Duryodhana see some sense. Now, he could have chosen not to support Duryodhana. And if that he had done that, Duryodhana might have agreed for Krishna's peace proposal, late as it was. Because although he had made Bhishma and Drona as his first commanders, he knew that Bhishma and Drona did not share any strong emotion against the Pandavas. So outside his family, the only person who had strong emotions against the Pandavas was Karna. So if Karna had come on to Duryodhana's, gone from Duryodhana's, away from Duryodhana's side, that would have almost like broken the back of Duryodhana. So the war would either not have happened or the war would have been much less severe and Duryodhana would have stopped much earlier. So that was the first reason was of friendship. And the second reason he gave is that I was raised by Adhirath and that by my parents. When Kunti abandoned me and they have raised me. Now for the greed of a kingdom, how can I abandon my parents? I will not do that. He said, I have built a life over there. I have wives, I have children, and I will not leave them for the greed of a kingdom. Well, this is again a strange logic. Because was Krishna telling him to leave? Now would his parents have felt abandoned? The parents had also told him, that we found you in a river. That that fact was hidden from him. So he knew that they were like his adoptive parents. And if they came to know that he was born in royalty, they wouldn't have felt any rejection. In one sense, Krishna himself had lived like that. Krishna had been born Vasudeva and Devaki, and then he had been raised by Yashodananda Maharaj. So now Yashodananda Maharaj, of course, were unhappy when Krishna left Vrindavan, but it was not that he rejected his relationship with them. So this was a false logic that he used. And then, interestingly, he said that I had a dream in which I saw that Duryodhana is dressed in black and he is shaved and he is being drawn by a cart. He's lying on a cart drawn by donkeys. And Yudhishthir is dressed in white and he's anointed and he's drawn in a chariot drawn by white horses. And Yudhishthir's chariot is going upwards and Duryodhana's chariot is going downwards. So he said, as per the omens, I understand that Duryodhana is going to die. And that in this Kurukshetra war, we will be killed. But my friendship is that I will stick with Duryodhana till the end. So this is where the choice that Karna made. Karna said, I will honor my word. So Karna's choice was actually, he said, I have to live for the word of honor. I've given my word, I'll stick to that. And that is true, but what was the other choice for him? The other choice was actually a life of honor. Life of honor means he would have been on the side of Dharma. Not just honored in the sense that he would be honored. And some people would criticize him. He abandoned his friend because of the greed of a kingdom and all that. And that criticism will always be there. There will always be some people who criticize us. No, we will never be in a situation where nobody will criticize us. The only thing you can do, if you want that everyone should be happy with you and no one be unhappy with you, start a charity for distributing free sweets. Anything else we do in life, people are going to be unhappy with us. Of course, if you distribute free sweets also, there are people who are diabetic, they will criticize you. Why are you distributing something else?
Why the same sweet every day?
So the thing is that for him, that was his choice, and this was not a circumstantial choice. He did his reasoning. It was an intentional choice, and in many ways, his fate was sealed by this choice. So Karna, was he ruined by destiny? No, he was ruined by his decisions. Yes, destiny created bad situations for him, but destiny created bad situations for Arjuna also. Unfortunately, Karna, now he chose to go against even his own intelligence, or whatever omens he had got, he went against that. So Karna's defeat or Karna's destruction, whatever you want to say, Karna's ruin, that was not because of destiny. Destiny plays a role in our life, no doubt, but it was because of the decision that he made. And then when the war played out, now Karna has become the commander. In one sense, he had also given a vow. He had given his word to Kunti that he will always have 5 sons. Now it's interesting, Kunti had not asked him for this. He saw that Kunti has come because she wants to protect her sons from being killed by me. But that was of course a concern of a mother, but Kunti was also concerned that he should not be killed. Now for her, it was not that my sons will be killed, for her, he was also her son. And it's not just any son being killed, it's sons fighting against each other. That is a mother's worst nightmare. She wanted to avoid that. Now when he gave her the blessing that I will not kill any of your other sons apart from Arjuna, you will always have 5 sons. Now he was preserving his reputation as being charitable. But that was not something which Kunti asked him for. Kunti did not want the fight to happen. But now the fight had come about. And Karna was the commander. And as the commander, he would now fight. The 16th and 17th days, the 16th day and the 17th first half of the day, were his moments of glory. And those we will discuss in tomorrow's session. But the overall climatic arc is that he chose, he could say circumstantially, he fell on the wrong side. But he chose to stay on the wrong side. Not only chose to stay on the wrong side, he also rejected the opportunity to come to the right side. Sometimes somebody may be trapped on the wrong side by a bad situation, and you may have no opportunity to get out. There's one devotee from Italy, he was telling me that when he first heard this, Yad Gatva Nanivartante, you go there, you never come back. He said, that is the Bhagavad Gita. He said, the thought that came in my mind was the mafia. You get into the mafia, you cannot get out from there. So, sometimes we are trapped in a situation from which we just can't come out. But now, Krishna had given Karna a way to come out. But he chose not to. And that was not just his misfortune, but that was his decision. So today, I'll summarize what we discussed. We talk about Karna's story, or Karna's arc. So I discussed how, from a perspective of when we see an action of a character, especially a bad action, there's a question that is it out of character or is it the character itself? And if it is out of character means we can say it is because of circumstance. So at what point does a person's bad action start reflecting their character itself? And can't be excused based on circumstances. That was the broad issue that we were discussing. Another point we are discussing is how there are, when we see things, there are the facts. That I see can have two meanings, and there are perceptions. So we discussed how life was unfair to Karna. That is true. That is there, no doubt. But then life was unfair to Arjuna also. Now we could compare and say whose unfairness was greater, whose was lesser. That's a different issue. But life was unfair to both of them. And we discussed about how the three major incidents in Karna's life. That was the whole talk of the discussion. The first was the exhibition, the martial exhibition. And in that, even say when he grabbed the opportunity, which was good. In that connection, I discussed about birth. Birth is all that matters, and birth does not matter at all. Both are extremes. It is that birth matters in terms of the upbringing and also the past karmic tendencies. So, in between these, we have the birth does matter. So, when Karna was asked about his birth, that is a fair question. So, there is birth matters because of how the person is upbringing and how the person is tendency from past. So, now in this he grabbed the opportunity. So, you can say his choice. So, we are looking at his choices in this situation. The choices could be said to ignorance of Duryodhana's nature, and this is a good opportunity to grab. This next situation was the gambling match, the disrobing basically, the gambling match. Now, in this case, what happened was he ended up with a bad association. It didn't just make him bad; it made him worse. So this was again, you could say, the circumstance. He needed to be accepted. He wanted to prove his loyalty to Duryodhana, or that I don't want to be excluded from there. But then Krishna's proposal, when he rejected that, that was completely his intentional decision, his intention, and that was what sealed his fate. That was what ruined him eventually. So his two mistaken calculations was friendship and family. That I cannot reject my friend, I cannot reject my family. So family, he didn't have to reject them. And friendship, actually the true friendship would have been to stop his friend from doing something wrong. So both were mistaken logic. And thus, what happened to Karna, we'll see in the war tomorrow when we discuss. Tomorrow or after? Yeah. When we discuss, we'll be seeing about how Karna fought and the final battle that happened against him, and how whether that was unfair, and how do we actually decide what is fair and unfair. So we'll discuss all in tomorrow's, in the after tomorrow's session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare Ram,
Hare Ram,
Hare Ram,
Hare Ram,
Ram Ram,
Ram Ram,
Hare
Hare.
Let us all offer our prayers. When life puts us in bad situations, that we all can make good decisions even in those bad situations. And sometimes dear Lord, even if we make a bad decision, let us not stick to that bad decision in future, but try to come to the right choice as soon as the situation changes and we get an opportunity. We cannot sometimes we cannot avoid making bad decisions, but we can avoid persisting in our bad decisions. That is what we all can learn from Karna's life. Please let us, my Lord, remember this lesson, that we can also act wisely. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
How fortunate our ancestors were. Sort of thinking for a moment when I was sitting there. They used to hear Harikatha every day. Every day. And how unfortunate we are that We don't get to hear it every day. And ridiculously unfortunate are we when we know that it's happening, and the rest is Karna. Right? He was told Harikatha right by Hari himself, but still he just buried himself in his assumptions and thoughts. And one thing I felt, Prabhuji, lot of questions again, I'm sure, please keep writing it down, is that he got Pandavas when they're in the most weakest situation, right? When they're playing Dasya Rasa, Dasya Bhav in the gambling match. Draupadi is unprotected by their own husband, and then he insults them and then he exploits them. That shows what kind of a demoniac mentality a person can be. Even if he was a Kshatriya, catch people when they're in the strong position. Like, you want to say, make a statement when they can return it back to you. But he's chosen to, take it to a path when they can't react to it. That's another thing I was just thinking about.
To hit someone when they are down, that just shows meanness. That does not show any strength at all.
Any strength at all, right? So people, and by the way, so Karna doesn't. There are so many lessons from Karna that we have to learn, especially taking. If you are part of Andhra and Telangana, for the amount of damage one superhero has done, glorifying Karna, Dana, Veera, Sura, Veera, and so much nonsense is propagated that people actually worship Karna in this part of the world. They worship Karna. If you tell anything against Karna, they leave satsang also. Karna's descendants are there in Andhra. Or rather created. So, Karna's discussion will continue and don't miss it. Next Friday, Prabhuji has to go to Bangalore tomorrow for giving another session there urgently. He's coming back by tomorrow night. He's just going and coming the same day only for us. Actually, the same publisher, the publisher who has published Prabhuji's amazing book, copy of books. Can see here, same publisher. Is that HarperCollins? They are organizing a conference for Prabhuji so that he addresses many corporates at once. So it was a choice that had to be made, and the choice was well made. Prabhuji is going there. You want to say something?
You helped me make the good choice.
Yeah.
I think there was a corporate program planned that day. We adjusted that.
We moved it actually. Shalom Mataji is the one who moved it. I completely planned and I said, no, Mataji, please move it to the next. But in any case, so Karna's topic is going to continue on Friday, so please don't miss it. And one more thing, after yesterday's class, I went to Prabhuji and I was asking that, he was speaking about Drona in Mahabharata, he was speaking about Karna in Mahabharata, he was speaking about Bhishma in Mahabharata. What about Krishna in Mahabharata? I said, yes, yeah. That's like Narad Muni coming and telling, Vyasdev said, where is Krishna in your Vedas? So I'm sure that was planned, it had to be like that. So this Sunday is Krishna in Mahabharata. Exclusively Krishna in Mahabharata. And then, so it will be divided 2 sessions. Krishna in Mahabharata for 2 hours, a little break, and then 2 hours of questions and answers. Right? So it's going to be a long session. Right? So please come early. By 4:30 you are here. So 4 o'clock rather. 4 to 6. 6 to 6:30 gap. 6:30 to 8:30 Q&A. We'll try to take maximum advantage of Prabhuji when Prabhuji is here. And one more thing, I really am grateful to all the Matajis who had formed a team, I think last year, after Prabhuji's visit, to support Prabhuji in his book writing and articles, where Prabhuji speaks and makes things. Yeah, continue. Right? There are 9 Matajis who are doing it. And so Prabhuji is having a thought. It is not a, can you off that? 1 minute. Yeah. So Prabhuji is having a thought, or why not making those 18 days a book? It's still a thought, he's finalizing it. But you will need a lot of help from the same team of Matajis. to convert that into a book at a very rapid pace, right? And of course, a lot of drawings and a lot of things that have been put here, transcripting it. And if anybody wants to support, you can approach Deepa Mataji. She is kind of leading the group, directing the group. Yeah, Nirupa Mataji is there. Lakshmi Mataji is not here. Please ask her to come. Prabhuji is asking where is she. Yeah, yeah. So that's one great thing, that's happening. It's very beautifully connecting. Just imagine if these classes are conducted in every school for half an hour in the morning, how will the society be?
100%.
Right? Just by education. And if this becomes like a textbook, with a proper syllabus of 1 year and given to 9th class students or 10th class students, each character of Mahabharata with the lessons, with all these things, it's done deal. You don't have to do anything more. Isn't it? So many misconceptions are removed, so many things are done. All food for thought for us to think about. But something like this is so beneficial for all of us. Right? So please don't miss the forthcoming sessions. And please don't miss gifting this or taking this book if it's still not taken. Right? It's 450 rupees and you can gift it to as many people as you can. Because people may hesitate to take Bhagavad Gita. But since they have a desire to become CEO, they take Gita for CEO. And then you can get the Bhagavad Gita also. It's a good prelude to connect people to. And I already appreciate all the devotees who are conducting these sessions, corporate sessions and congregation sessions. So please come on Friday morning, same time. Don't come tomorrow. The Kurukshetra will be empty. Tomorrow Kurukshetra is taken off because in Kaliuga nobody can work so hard. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
HG Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki Jai, Prabhupada ki Jai, Prabhupada ki Jai.